Today, we're diving into a White House executive order aimed at one of the biggest financial hurdles for so many Americans, the sky-high cost of housing. Let's get right into it.
It's a question that's probably crossed your mind a million times. You look at the price of a new house and just think, how did it get so high? Well, the administration behind this particular executive order has a very specific target in mind.
Just take a look at this number. Over $90,000. That is a huge figure. I mean, that's more than a hefty down payment. It's more than a nice car. But what on earth does it represent? Well, according to industry estimates that the administration has pointed to, that's how much government regulations from the local to the federal level can apparently add to the price of a single new home. And it's that cost that this new order is trying to bring down.
So, faced with a number like that, the White House issued an executive order designed to do, well, exactly what the title says, cut through the red tape that they believe is bloating the cost of housing. So, what does this order actually do?
Well, think of it like this. It's putting federal agencies on notice. It's telling them to go through their rulebooks and find and then fix or get rid of the regulations that are slowing down construction and driving up costs. And you can bet the home building industry had something to say about this. The reaction was immediate and very positive. This quote here from the National Association of Home Builders shows they see this as a huge step in the right direction.
Okay, so the builders are definitely on board, but what does this push to cut regulations actually look like in practice? Let's open up the federal playbook and see what the specific targets are.
Now, the order is pretty broad, but it really zeroes in on a few key areas where federal rules can have a major impact on how and how fast we build homes. Let's break those down. First up is environmental permitting. The order specifically targets rules that have to do with water, like wetlands permitting, which can sometimes add pretty significant delays and costs to construction projects.
Next, there's something called NEPA reviews. These are those really lengthy environmental impact studies that are required for a lot of projects. The goal of the order here is to create more exemptions, which would let some housing projects skip this step and get off the ground much faster. Third on the list, energy and water standards. The order is calling for a review of just how strict these efficiency requirements really need to be, with the idea being that maybe they're adding unnecessary costs to new homes.
And finally, we have manufactured housing. This is such a key source of affordable homes in this country, and the order is looking to relax some of the rules and financing regulations that affect this market. Okay, so that's the federal plan. But here's where things get really interesting and, frankly, a lot more complicated. An executive order can only directly change federal rules. But a huge chunk of the regulations that affect housing, well, they aren't federal at all. And this brings us to the local rule challenge.
This slide really gets right to the heart of the issue. On one side, you have the federal rules we've been talking about. But over on the other side, you've got all the local and state stuff, like zoning laws and building codes. In many places, these are the biggest roadblocks to new construction, and they're not something the president can just change with the stroke of a pen.
So, if the federal government can't force local governments to change, how does it try to influence them? It uses what's often called a carrot and stick approach. The basic idea is to use federal money as leverage to encourage or nudge local governments to make reforms.
Here's how that plan is supposed to work. It's basically a two-step process. First, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, will come up with a list of best practices for local governments. And then, step two, other federal agencies are told to prioritize grants and aid for the cities and states that actually adopt these practices.
So what do these best practices look like? Well, there are things like putting a cap on permit fees, streamlining the approval process for certain developments so they can get built by right, and making it easier to build with manufactured homes. And there's one more carrot in the mix. The order also connects housing development with the Opportunity Zone program, which uses tax breaks to encourage private investment in new homes.
Okay, so we have a federal plan, and we have a strategy to try and influence local governments. But what does all of this actually mean in the real world? Let's take a moment for a quick reality check.
This is the big question, isn't it? After all is said and done, will this executive order actually make homes cheaper for everyday people?
The short answer? Probably not, at least not right away. Any changes to federal rules will take time, they have to go through a whole rulemaking process, and they'll almost certainly face legal challenges. The real significance of this order is that it signals a major shift in policy from the top.
And what's so fascinating here is that this order taps into a growing consensus. You have more and more policymakers from both sides of the aisle all coming to the same conclusion.
You can't solve the housing affordability crisis without solving the housing supply crisis. We just aren't building enough homes.
And that leaves us with the central question at the heart of this entire debate. If pretty much everyone agrees that we need more housing supply, is cutting regulations the best way to get there? There are no easy solutions, but that is the critical question this whole policy shift forces all to confront.